Yes, Peskov stated that the Kremlin published the video of Putin coughing by mistake. Let me quote, "This mistake was made so that there won't be any more of them." That's a quote from Putin's talking mustache. But what really happened? Let's watch the report and then we'll discuss everything with Abbas Gallyamov.
A new intrigue is unfolding behind the scenes of Russian politics. The reason was, it would seem, an ordinary congratulatory message for International Women's Day. However, it was this message that unexpectedly sparked a wave of rumors about internal struggles within the entourage of dictator Vladimir Putin. It all started when a draft recording leaked online. It was President Putin's International Women's Day greeting, in which he coughs for a long time and at one point asks to reshoot the take. Obviously, this video was supposed to remain behind closed doors. The Kremlin's official response was already familiar. The publication happened by mistake and the video was a draft material. Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov called the appearance of the recording accidental and emphasized that it does not reflect any signals about the president's health. Nevertheless, a source in the administration stated that the employees who posted the video have already been identified and an investigation is ongoing to determine exactly who did it. The presidential administration is convinced that the purpose of the leak was to portray the head of state in an unfavorable light. The video scandal coincided with other notable signals from the Russian elite. The head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, has hardly appeared in public, but made a significant political gesture by publishing a post about Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, calling him one of the country's most prominent statesmen. This compliment stands out especially against the backdrop of Kadyrov's caution over the past week. Particular attention is drawn to the key figures who determine the balance of power within the Kremlin. Behind the scenes, among these figures, Nikolai Patrushev is mentioned, one of the most influential representatives of the security bloc and a longtime associate of the Russian president. It is clear that, in the context of a possible struggle over the future configuration of power, it is the security bloc that may play a key role. In this context, Patrushev is seen as a figure interested in maintaining the maximum influence of his group within the system. Thus, it can be assumed that various information campaigns undermining the position of the current president may be beneficial. To those who are considering scenarios of power redistribution, if we look at all these events together, the leak, the video with the congratulatory message, public political signals from regional leaders, and the discussion around possible risky trips by the president, the situation starts to look different.
Dear friends, right now, political analyst Abbas Gallyamov is joining our broadcast. Abbas, hello, thank you so much for finding the time. As always, I'm glad to see you.
Hello, I'm glad as well. And
right now, you and I are in different countries. I'm in Kyiv, there's an air raid alert. You're in Israel, and well, there could be an air raid alert at any moment there too. But I suggest we start with what happened in the Kremlin. On the one hand, it's a rather absurd story, a coughing fit. Putin congratulates the lovely ladies. On March 8th, and there are many opinions about this, some say it's just typical Russian carelessness, they just messed it up. No, it's not the wrong take, as often happens. Some even say that maybe they're trying to get rid of Putin this way and show that the Tsar isn't actually invulnerable. What do you think it was?
well, I know quite well how things work over there, because I myself worked for 3 years in the presidential administration and in the government apparatus when Putin was prime minister. So having an understanding of how the press service operates, they are actually very attentive, they are very professional. And so while I can't completely rule out that a mistake happened, still I won't insist on this version because, well, the human factor hasn't gone anywhere. And as far as I understand, this happened very late in the evening. At that time, a person already wants to sleep, so they could have made a mistake. You can't completely rule that out. But overall, I'll repeat, they work very attentively and carefully, and things like this usually don't happen with them. That's why I completely rule out the version that this was done deliberately. Some kind of anti-Putin version, simply because as a result of this situation, Putin didn't so much lose as he won. That's precisely why I don't rule out that this was an attempt by Peskov and Gromov. In general, Gromov likes these kinds of historical things. He is the first deputy head of the presidential administration who oversees Russian propaganda. Maybe they tried in this way to somehow liven up Putin, to bring him closer to the people, because he has a very serious problem with his image, his public persona. He has turned into, a man in a case, someone endlessly distant from the people. Yes, and overall he has become set in stone, so to speak, and has practically stopped interacting with people in person. Well, he doesn't want to communicate with them. Yes, he has an understanding, an inner sense that, well, his approval rating is no longer what it used to be from being a president of hope. He has long since turned into a president of disappointment. And that's why it's easy to go to people when you know they love you and have hope in you, and their eyes are moist with happiness when they see you. But in a situation where you suspect that they hate you and secretly wish you would go to follow the Iranian Rahbar Ali Khamenei, well, the desire to communicate with them just disappears. That's why in recent years he has minimized his communication with the country. Where they show him with people, usually those aren't real people, but those they call FSO officers. That's far from all. FSO officers, employees of the Federal Protective Service. These are some officials, regional ones. So, for example, he comes to some region, I don't know, Tula, for instance. These are, for example, Tula United Russia members, Tula ONF, activists, public figures, and among them, so to speak, they look for certain people. Loyalists, those who won't accidentally ask uncomfortable questions and who will, so to speak, put on a show of happiness. So this is not the real people. And that's why, in part, this problem with his image, this loss of connection with the people, is related to Putin's own behavior. In part, it's also connected to the agenda itself. That is, everyone is tired of the war, people feel that Putin is busy with God knows what, but not with what the people actually need. He dreams about Donbas. For some reason we need it, so to speak, instead of fixing the pipes that keep bursting, leaving homes without heat and hot water, without heating in winter. Or, for example, dealing with inflation problems, working on the economy. In other words, people have a ton of everyday problems, while Putin is off somewhere floating in some kind of geopolitical clouds. This, of course, also contributes. There's this feeling that he is endlessly distant from us, yes, and this story really demonstrates that. But a simple human Putin, no, that's not there. Not just, a portrait called a living person, like he coughs or chats amicably with his subordinates, but people like to look deeper, like peeking through a keyhole, trying to see what's going on with those in power. And sometimes, in principle, there's this political technology. Sometimes it's used to create the illusion of this peeking, this spying. I don't rule out that this was just such a case.